G'day everyone, popping in for our usual Friday chat. Just going to give it a couple of minutes to make sure everyone knows that I'm online. Like I said, it always takes a while sometimes. I don't know, I'm just still trying to work out why on earth do people think I'm a Sony fanboy. I can't quite understand where they get that from. What do you think? I really can't. I mean, what do they mean I'm a Sony fanboy? They've got no reason to think that at all. So let's see who's on board anyway before we switch over. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. Johnson City Aerial Photography's in here. Yeah, let's just get this started early. Carl's here as well. Mark is here as well. When I first glanced at the preview pic here, I had a flashback to my Sony Mavica days. Yeah, I know. That's me actually talking. James says, looks a lot like a phone. Carl says, ta-da. Van says, hello from Michigan. D. Harlow says, howdy, David. Jason says, yay, I finally got to catch one of these from the beginning. That's great, Jason. Good to see you in here. Philip says, hey, boss. The Essential Light's given a thumbs up. Zaddy says, dislike, go Canon. I haven't got one already, have I? No, I haven't. That's funny. I thought I had already. Carl says, ha-ha. Jason says, g'day. Van says, haha. Diallo says they are delusional. Pav says, Sony Cup into house. Hello, everyone. Looking good, Cup. Good looking Cup. I know. How good is it? You're looking clean shaven tonight. Yeah, no, I thought I'd make I thought I'd try for you guys to really get my Metro look going. Or the Metro looks when it's partly there, isn't it? So I thought I'd have a clean shaven look today. You're a page Sony shill, aren't you? I've had a few of those comments this week, Tim. You wouldn't believe it. I've had all these ones. One guy commented basically to say he hates watching my videos because I'm just always one-sided to Sony. And I just said, well, it was a Sony show. Why did you watch? That's why I love doing this, because they'll be so angry when they see this. I'm not a Sony shill, guys. I mean, I don't like Sony at all. Oh, I love it. It's funny. Robin says, you're getting famous, David. Hey, mate. G'day, Robin. How are you? Reese Washy said, yes, I made it. It's great to see you here, Reese. I mean, I love to see people get on board. I am going to open up my coffee very shortly. My coffee. So Reese said, yes, you made it. So that's fantastic as well. So guys, if you can, please give me a thumbs up, because often people aren't getting notifications. So I would really appreciate if you could do that for me. Like I said, I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. And then we'll sort of see from there. Hello from sunny and warm SA, California. Gene says, my problem with some of those highly skinned Android type devices using an old version of it, Android 7 was released in 2016, it's version 9 now. Well, I'm going to talk all about that shortly, because it's interesting to see which way the future may go, and I'd like to talk about that in one of the news articles that's actually out there. Where did you get your cup? Well, what I did was I filled out I should say this first, Sony sent me this so that I could basically promote them and to say really good things, just like Sony sent me this. There was a condition, though, if they sent me them, that I had to basically just promote Sony and say nothing at all, bag everyone else. Now, I filled in a survey, Australian Pro Support, filled in, you just fill it in. Now, I filled in there, they give a questionnaire each year, and they sent me the cup, and I think I got a mouse pad, a bag, and something else, and I love the cup the most. So that's why. So it was done from Sony Pro Support, sent that. David sent me this, a YouTuber from, someone that follows me from the US. He sent me a few of these shirts. I've got a black one and also a red one. I love these to death. I love the orange one particularly, because as you guys know, I do love colourful t-shirts. So David sent me this, and he also sent one for Kiara too. Now, I may be doing a shoot with Kiara on Tuesday, so I'll have to see if I can take it and put it on and just post it so that David can see that she's got that on. I don't know if she'll like it, because, you know, she wouldn't have a clue what Sony is, but it'll be interesting to see if she'll wear it anyway, so I will give it to her, just like David asked. It is a brilliant shirt, Trev, I know, I love it. What else have we got? So that's where I got the cup from. Why can't you get Sony events out there now that your hands in their pockets? I know, I wish we could. I really do hope that they start doing them. Now, I have applied for, it was a job advertisement that they were asking for 20 Australians to, I can't remember the actual term for it, but it was to work for Sony and doing workshops and things like that. Now, I have applied. Whether I get it or not, I don't know. I mean, you don't know what they're looking for sometimes. But I have applied for it, so I'll let you know how I go and if I do get in. But they are after 20 people that basically you'd get cheaper Sony gear. You'd be handed the gear before it obviously comes out, and you'll also be doing workshops for Sony. So I'm hoping, due to my qualifications, that they give that to me, because it had to be a fair bit on the teaching side, and I could then put into the application that I am actually I have a Bachelor of Education, so I can actually put that on my application. Also, I also taught at university and also high school photography, so hopefully with those qualifications and my work, I'll be selected. But you never know what they're looking for, so we'll have to wait and see. So hopefully there will be some events coming out shortly, Tim. I'm hoping that's the case. Three Trees love this. Roy says, morning. Jason says, you haven't truly made it unless you've made a few enemies. Well, I've made a few of those now, I can tell you, Jason. And I'm going to post some soon. Rui says, hello, everyone from Alabama. Dwayne says, I followed you on IG today. Love your feed. Did I follow you back, Dwayne? I usually follow people straight back. Let me just check. Because I always try to. I'll just tell you in a second whether I've got any. Well, I must have, because I haven't got any follows on there. If you do want to follow me, guys, I'll put my name in here. It's just Oastler, because if you do follow me, I will follow you back, I promise. Sometimes, because I've got nearly 16,000 subscribers, sometimes I can miss it because the feed goes too long sometimes. If I do miss it and you have followed me, just message me and then I'll follow you from there. So if I do miss it, make sure you do that. So yeah, please follow me on Instagram and I'll follow you back. Brilliant shirt, yes, I know. Van says, so jealous. I know, Van, you would be. This shirt is amazing. Hi, David, Ricky from New York. Hi, Rui, Alabama here. Chris says, hello, David. A Corona day from Los Angeles. Cheers. Robin said, APS-C arts are coming. Interesting as well. So how are we going for time? Because I'm going to give it another minute and then we're going to start. Like I said, guys, if you can, please give me a thumbs up. It just makes sure more people watch me that aren't getting notifications. So I would really appreciate that. I've got a number of stories I'm going to go with you today. There's about 3, I think, and then we're going to go into open Q&A and stuff. But the 3 will probably take a while to get through. Jess said, going to follow you now. Thanks, Jess, and I'll actually follow you back as soon as this is finished. Dwayne says, I'm Cable Car Guru and Fleet Images. Hertz said, laugh out loud, what camera is that on the thumbnail? Looks like a phone with one of those .com releases. Well, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about that as the third story. So we'll go through all of that together, because I'm starting to think it could be the way the future is going to be, and we need to talk about that. And I thought that's what we'd have a chat about as well. So while we're here in the pre-show, let me just open up my coffee, because the coffee comes in a bottle. What's Jim said there? Greets mate, me, the angry Minnesota here, because it's so effing cold and still 60 degrees, F warmer than it will be in 2 months. It's not warm here today, actually. It's quite cool. What is the temperature? I'll tell you in a second. I've got to be careful where I put this. The temperature is only 18 degrees Celsius, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's warming up tomorrow, though, and I think on Monday I'm going out with Kiara. It's going to be 29 degrees Celsius, so that's lovely. Cheers for the coffee. Nice and malty coffee. That's about it. All right, guys, let's switch over, because I'm going to go to the Oastler Images sign, and then we'll get started. So bear with me just for a second. G'day, everyone. Popping in for our usual Friday live show, going through a few news and rumours. Please, if you're not a Sony, if you hate Sony, please do not watch this, because I've had people go on saying that I'm a Sony fanboy. And my whole point is that this is the Sony Live Rumours and News show, so you shouldn't be watching this. So if you are watching this and you hate Sony, it might be a good idea to switch off. I'm just waiting until I get a thumbs down. I haven't got one yet, which is amazing, because sometimes I've got them before the show even starts, which is hilarious. But like I said, remember the shows that are on the Friday are more Sony orientated, although there's a story today which isn't Sony, but I'm going to relate that to where I think Sony may go down in the future. But remember, this is the Sony Live Rumours and News discussion. So there you go. So there's no excuse to watch it if you don't want to. Now, a couple of things too. On Monday, I'm hoping to get out again and shoot. I've got my first weekend off, actually, since the last 8 weeks. So I'm really looking forward to having a weekend off this weekend. I've got weddings again the following week, so it's great to have a weekend off, which I'm really looking forward to. We're both a bit tired, Kerry and myself, so we're looking forward to doing something a little bit different. But Monday I'm actually going to go out with Kiara again, I think. Not sure what we're going to do yet, but I'm probably going to go to Melbourne or something and do a shoot through there. Probably try the Tamron again or something like that. I'm not sure what I'll do yet, but I'll think of something. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll obviously have the new wedding, I think it's the fourth one of the wedding series up over the weekend or on Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. By the way, some great news. I'm a granddad again. I've got my first grand boy or baby boy. My son's wife just had a baby boy yesterday. So we're thrilled because I've got, 4 granddaughters, and now I'm going to have a baby boy as well. So everyone's wrapped because we thought we were just going to keep getting girls. So I'm so happy that that's around. So I thought I'd mention that anyway. So I'm tickled pink that I'm now a granddad to a boy as well. So they're sort of the side things that's going on. Like I said, if you can, guys, please give me a thumbs up, because it helps people that don't have the getting the notifications, because for some reason YouTube is not notifying people, and it can be a real pain that they miss out because they're not getting that bell. Even though they've subscribed to it, they don't get it. So please, if you can, I'd love a thumbs up. It does share what's there. People are just coming up saying, congrats, Poppy. I know, I'm so happy. It's just, there's nothing like being a grandfather, guys. It really is. I mean, I love being a dad, but there's nothing beats being a granddad, that's for sure. And being the first boy as well is something a bit special, because, like I said, we've got 4 daughters. We never thought we were going to get a boy, and we've just had that. So we're really excited about it. I'm going to go and see him tonight. So I'm really looking forward to that. Can't wait. So thank you all so much for the congratulations. I'm tickled pink, even though I'm wearing orange. And just as we were talking at the beginning, people may not have come in the pre-show, but, I can't understand why people are saying I'm a Sony fanboy, because there's no reason to think that. Anyone that thinks I'm a Sony fanboy, seriously, get a grip. I have to thank Dave for sending these T-shirts. I love these T-shirts. I've got the black one and then the orange one here. I don't know where he gets them from, but they were sent from the US anyway. But I love these. How good are they? I like the black one, but the orange one is even better. I love it. I've got one for Kiara, so I'm going to get her to wear that on Monday if I can, at least for a shot or something, just to annoy some of the haters out there. I might post it, and that'll really send them off. Oh, I love it. Some fairly good news. A supplier contacted, like I've said to you all along, I'm always totally honest with you guys. A supplier sent me, he actually contacted me the other day. I think it was from China, judging by the language. But I have, as you know, I've always been using the Eldachrome sliders. If you've looked at a lot of the stuff I've done, I have been using those. And the thing with the Eldachrome stuff, it is fairly expensive, and I've always purchased them myself. Now, this guy from China contacted me to see if I would review a motorized slider. And I'm not going to show it to you yet, because I'll wait until he sends it actually over. But he has offered to send it to me, and I suppose I get to keep it. He didn't say anything about me sending it back. But I did tell him in the email that I will always be honest to my YouTube audience, and if there's faults with it, I'm going to say there's faults with it, and he was happy with that. And it's a fairly cheap one. I think it's only around the $400 US, I think, or 500, I can't remember. But it looks like it's going to be a fairly decent model that you can control from your phone, and you can actually have it motorized, and it does time lapse. and you can have the motorized head to do video and things like that. So I'm looking forward to getting that. A lot of the stuff I knocked back, but this is something that I could actually possibly use, and it might be something for you guys that if you don't want to pay for the really expensive gear, that this may be all right. So I'll let you know, and like I said, I'm always going to be open with you guys. I'm never going to accept anything or do a review without telling you honestly if it's been sent to me or anything like that. So anyway, I'm looking forward to getting that. I don't know how soon it will get here. It might take a couple of weeks of shipping, I'm not sure, but I can't wait to try it because I've always had a look out for a motorized one. I know when I'm using manual sliders, that I can tend to be a little bit jerky because I don't do it very often and I'm not very good at it. So to have something that would be motorized to sweep across and have it really smooth may be a really nice thing to have. I'm just not sure how big it is and things like that, so that's the things I've got to wait and see. So stay tuned for that, so it will be interesting to see what's coming on. Apart from that, because we're probably going to be here again for a while, let's go through the first news story, because I wanted to discuss this, and I'm going to show you the lenses I use, because in... let me just move this over so that we can get this in the right place. I know before we actually do this, let me just check in the chat before we go any further, just to see if there's anything that we need to discuss before we move on. Jim Penn saying -4. Whoa, that's cold. we don't get anything like that. What else have we got? Hurt said, laugh out loud, what camera is that on the thumbnail? I'm going to discuss that shortly, her. Jim said, greets mate, me the angry Minnesota, and because it's so effing cold and 6 degrees warmer than it will be in 2 months. Mark says it's 26 degrees Celsius in Brisbane. Flying High or Low says, actually, I think it's the ugly phone camera is an interesting concept. Just think of what functions it can have in 10 years. Jim will be discussing that soon. Jim Penn saying -4. Whoa, that's cold. Too Smart says, Zeiss new camera is very similar in operation to the YN450. Internal storage is coming to all cameras soon. You may be right. We'll have a discussion about that too. Hope you like Pixar saying hi. Oops, I've got to switch over. Hope you like Pixar saying hi. Trevor said, the latest rumour is that the Panasonic SR1 will have the internal NDs. If that's actually true, it would be great, since it's no way would Sony let that go unanswered. I'd love the internal ND. I've been looking at a couple of reviews online showing how much the GH5 has improved with the latest firmware update. I think it's 2.4 or something. And the autofocus has become usable. It's still not as good as the other cameras, but it has become usable. And that's interesting. So perhaps they are starting to work around those algorithms and get better results from the Panasonic. So it's going to be interesting to see what the SR1 will be like. Everyone's saying congratulations for being a grandfather. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate that. Jim says, all think of the thumbs up button as the shutter button. Go ahead and click. I love it. Jason says, I've heard that Canon shooters eat their young. Oh, Jason. MJoy said, Jason, it's tasty colour science. So let's not get back into that. Boy, do I cop some hate whenever I mention colour science. Drake says, tell them if they don't like the video to hit dislike twice. That's what cracks me up. They don't realise that when they're doing that, they're still interacting with you. And the funny thing is that YouTube counts everything on actual engagement. Now, thumbs down is still engagement and you're still watching the video to do that or open that up. So they're still giving you basically some love in the first place. And it cracks me up because they think they're hurting you. But look, it may hurt younger people on YouTube and they're the ones I feel sorry for. I'm old enough that I just laugh it off. They hate competition. I think they do as well. Drake said, tell them if they don't like the video to hit dislike twice. I had a guy talking to me yesterday saying how much he hated watching me and it made him angry and all that sort of stuff. And I said, well, why do you watch me, mate? Just turn off. No one forces you to watch. It cracks me up. Are you getting the Sigma 56 1.4? No. I've mentioned to everyone all along that the lenses I buy probably from now on are going to be full frame lenses. I don't think that I'll buy any more APS-C lenses because, look, I do have the A6500 and the A6300, but I'm quite comfortable just using the full frame lenses on there, and then I can use them in full frame on my full frame cameras. So I don't think I'll be buying APS-C lenses unless Sony bring out some incredible A7000, and then the lenses may be beneficial to me that I'll only buy for that system. I may, but at this stage, I'm going to stick with putting full frame glass on it. I do have a couple. I'm going to talk about that in this first story in a minute. So no, I don't think I will, Zaddy. Even though they'll be great lenses, I think. I just don't think I'll be getting them. Wow, hope you like Pixar saying, calling for 2 inches of snow tomorrow. First snow of the year already. V for Valley says, the best lens I've used to date by far is the Sony Zeiss 25mm f2. Yeah, it's a nice, great lens, that one. I particularly think, though, that I may like the Sony G Master more than that one, only because of the weight. They might be similar weight, I'm not sure, but it's a fraction wider. And that G Master lens really seems to tick a lot of boxes. The other great baddest too is the 40mm, because I think it's the 40 that you can get really close and almost has a macro look about it as well. EJ says it's snowing in Michigan tonight. Do you ever do video on how you have your live stream set up? No, I haven't yet, but I probably will sometime along the track, because I will take everyone through that, how we do it. Fathom Rocker says, we love you, David. Thank you so much. Langston saying evening all. Daniel, before we go to the first news story, Daniel says, I've just got the A6300 and I'm thinking about getting the Tamron 28-75 to go with it, or beginning some wedding shootings. Haven't done much before. Love the channel. Thanks so much, Daniel. That lens will work great. The only thing is it may not be wide enough, so you're still going to need a wider angle, because remember, you're probably going to get, it'll be around about 40mm as your widest focal length, so you're going to have to watch that. So you probably will need some lenses, and I'll show you my lenses shortly. But you love the channel. Thanks so much for following us. Like I've said to everyone, this is like a bunch of mates sitting around a table having a drink of coffee. Bought the Rocking On 35 1.4 for the A7 III, mainly for video, and I'm stoked. Great lens. With crop mode and clear image zoom, it becomes very versatile. And that's what a lot of people think too. They forget to use clear image zoom, and that's one of the benefits of the Sony system, is you can get that clear image zoom working as well, which is fantastic. I use clear image zoom all the time. William saying hello from Dublin. Hope you like pics. Is there any timeline on the 70-200 Tamron? No, I hope though sometime next year. Peter says, have you tried the Z7? No, I haven't yet, Peter. I'd like to try it though. Mark says, on DP Review, said the 52.8 macro is great. I have that glass for sale. Yep, it is a good lens. Jim said, custom t-shirt for Susie. I should have put the t-shirt on Susie, shouldn't I? Langston says, just trying to pay bills before I get the Tamron 28-75. Coffee, yep. All right, let's go to first story. Because I noticed on DP Review, it actually says that they've selected the best lenses. Now, I'm not sure what they mean by best lenses, but they've come up with the lenses, and I think they're talking about overall lenses for value and basically that work well on the Sony system. So I don't think that they're saying that these are clearly the best lenses for Sony, because if you look at the lenses itself that they're actually stating here, and we'll go through these now. It's saying the best standard zoom lens is the Sony 24-105. So that's the best standard zoom that they're actually talking about. Best prime is the 28 f2. Best wide angle zoom is the 12-25 f4. Best telephoto lens is the FE 70-200 f4. Best macro lens is the 52.8. And the best travel zoom is the 24-105 f4. So the 24-105 gets two mentions in there. If you're looking at the APS-C lenses, they're saying the best zoom lens is the 18-105. Best prime is the 30-1.4. Best wide angle zoom is the 10-18. Best telephoto zoom is the 55-210. Best macro zoom is the FE 52.8. And the best travel zoom is the Tamron 18-200. So this is quite interesting, and I'll come back to the chat soon so that you can actually discuss this. But I think what they're saying here is it's the best value overall, like for money, weight, and things, ease of use and things like that. I mean, clearly, if you're talking about the best lenses that are out there, well, you'd think that G Masters would be in there. I mean, really, they haven't mentioned one G Master, I don't think. They're all the G lenses that have been mentioned, so they haven't mentioned any four of those. But I thought I'd discuss with you too what I use, because it might be sort of easy for me to go through and explain why I'm using what I'm using. So let's start with APS-C to begin with. And my favourite lens overall on the APS-C is the 28mm one. I think it's 28, isn't it? I always get confused. The 24 1.8, which is what I'm using right now. I adore that lens. It's the Sony lens. It is expensive though, and that's one thing you've got to remember. But it's one lens I will never get rid of, because that lens gives me the 35mm focal length on APS-C, which is what I love so much. That's my favourite focal length. And someone's just said decaf. Yes, it is decaf. It's a very malty sort of decaf. A bit of froth on the top. It's unusual. But I love that 24, and it does, like I said, it gives me that 35mm focal length. The focus is very, very fast. It's a very light lens, and I adore it. And that's my favourite lens that I have for APS-C. And all the people that have been following me for a long time would know that I love the 35mm focal length. So that is brilliant on that. The next lens that I love and use all the time is this one, which is the 10-18, and I do really love this. Let me see if it'll just focus. I also use this. Where's the thing there? Tells you what it is. Oh yeah, it's there. It's a 10-18. Now it is an f4, so it's a constant f4, but this thing is tiny. It is ridiculously small, and it weighs nothing. Like it's nuts how good this is. Now I use this on full frame as well, because when I use the 16-35, and I'll talk to you about that shortly, but when I use, say, if I do group photos at a wedding, and sometimes I can't get back enough even with 16mm, it's not wide enough. The beauty of this is you can use this on full frame from 12 to 16. So even though this is 10-18, you can use it on 12 to 16mm on full frame. So you're getting 12mm at f4. So it's a great lens on full frame as well. Great on a gimbal. It's brilliant on a gimbal if you wanted to use it, say, for that. And I think it's actually got stabilization. So another thing about this lens as well, it is optically stabilized. So if you're using this on the A6-300, you're getting stabilization. If you're using it on the A6-500, you're getting 5-axis stabilization. So it will make it very stable to walk around. Now, it's often not an issue if you're dealing with really wide focal lengths and lenses, but I love this lens and I adore it. I'll never get rid of it. I think it's really underrated, and it was mentioned as one of the best wide lenses for APS-C there. So that's the next one after the 24 1.8. The other lens that I use often is this one, which is the 18-105, which is the one they mentioned in there, which was the best standard zoom lens. Now, it is a zoom because it is actually basically a video lens, so you can zoom by using the ring, or you can actually just zoom by using this, and then it zooms in and out beautifully. And this also is a constant f4. Very quick focusing. It really is a great lens again, and again, I think it's very underrated. And this is another APS-C lens. But like I said, I probably won't buy any other APS-C lenses again. The only other APS-C lens I have is this one, which I use on full frame all the time, which is, does it have the thing here? This one is the, what is it, it's a 30mm macro, I think. Yeah, it's a 30mm macro, and it's a 3.5 aperture. So I use this all the time as my macro. Now, the reason why I don't photograph bugs and things like that where you have to be a little bit further away. If you need to be a bit further away, you need something like a 70 or a 90mm macro. I don't shoot that way. I'm only ever shooting details like wedding details, like the rings and things like that. So that's the one that I mostly use for macro work. And I'll stick this on my A7R2, and it gives me around a 19 megapixel file because it will work in Super 35 mode. Or I could just use it on the A6-500. It just depends which way I want to go. I prefer to manually focus on the A7R2. That's why I often shoot with this on the A7R2. So, you know, the viewfinder's better and things like that. So, are you hard on your... Yes, I am. Trevor, I'm terrible with my lenses. You know what? For me, they're there to be used, Trevor. So I am incredibly hard, and they'll look even worse when you look at the full frame ones. They still work perfectly, and this is why I laugh when people say the Sony stuff is not built well. I really am rugged with the stuff that I have, really rugged with the stuff that I have. I don't put lens covers on, I don't have the filters on them or anything, and I'll just throw them in my bag because I work quick in that way, and I am rough with the stuff. But remember, for me, they can all be written off. I very rarely sell lenses, and I only really get rid of things when they break down. And so for me, I'm not worried about reselling them because for me, lenses aren't to be resold unless you've got a really good reason to get rid of them. I'll always keep them. But I am really rough with them, yeah. But they've stood up to the test of time, guys, and this is why I'm saying the Sony stuff is not made cheaply at all. So that's all the APS-C stuff. So let's go now for full frame. So we'll start with the wide angle. So, I mean, look how... look, it's pretty rough. I mean, I have got scratches all over it. But you know what? They're there to be used, guys. I mean, some people put them inside socks and do all this sort of stuff, and I'm just throwing them in the bag. You'd laugh. You'd probably be horrified if you saw the way I treat my stuff. But this is the 16-35 f4. I love this lens. It really is a really underrated lens, and I noticed that's one they mentioned back there was one of the great lenses as well. It's a constant f4, really sharp. Focus is fantastic. It's not... Oh, it is stabilised. There you go. I didn't even know that. It has got optical stabilisation on this as well. I didn't even know that. Just shows I don't even know what I'm talking about. So this is optically stabilised as well. So you will get the full 5-axis stabilisation if you're dealing with this lens as well. It's nice and wide. Like I said, sometimes it may not be wide enough, and then I'll put the 10-18 on, and that gives me that extra bit of focal length. The next lens that I go and I love is the Sony 35 f2.8. I adore this lens for street work. It really is an amazing lens. This lens, Kerry often uses this because she just loves that focal length. And she really likes, and to be honest, sometimes the pictures that she shows me, I go, wow, what lens was that? And it's, someone's just said, okay, I feel less bad about how I treat mine. And I'm often looking at the images she takes and go, wow, what was that lens? And then I realise it was this. Like, it's incredible. I love the little lens hood that comes on. It's fantastic. Really sharp lens, very quick focusing. And again, I really adore this lens. I mean, how nice and small does this make a camera to walk around with and do street type photography? And 2.8 is pretty good for street photography. So that's the next lens that I love. Moving up obviously in price and money is the Sony 35 1.4. You can see I've got a lot of 35 lenses because I love that focal length. That's my favourite focal length. This is one where I'll often do details and things like that in the weddings. This isn't stabilised though, but it does have the declickable ring on there, and so it's just a beautiful lens. I adore this lens, and this is one of my favourite lenses actually that I've got on the Sony system. I really do love it. And I'll come back to the questions, guys, so I will come back to you. If we move up along the line, the next one is the 55 1.8. I love this lens to death. This is one where I actually use a lot on the gimbal. I found this is Sony's fastest focusing lens. They really do some voodoo with this lens, and I don't know what it is, but it works brilliantly in low light. Whenever I'm working in extremely low light, this is usually the lens that I'll go to because it does sort of have some voodoo science going on in there. It's unbelievably sharp. It's probably only beaten by the 50 1.4, but there's a massive price difference in that and massive size and weight difference. But I really think this is probably one of the main lenses that you should buy because the 50mm focal length is a really nice focal length. And again, it's lovely and small. Take the lens cap off and you can see how small this actually is. It really is tiny, but it's, as someone's just said, Trevor said it's stellar. It is. It's incredible. And you will not believe how sharp this lens actually is. It's incredibly sharp, super focusing, great video lens. A lot of the ones I shoot with Kiara have been shot with this on video. I adore it. Moving up, the Batis 85. This does have optical steady shot, so it doesn't mention it on the actual thing, but one of the things that you pay for, the extra on this, is it does have optical steady shot, and it's also weather sealed, whereas the Sony 85 isn't. And it does have a Zeiss pop, but I think I'm pretty certain that the 85 1.8, the Sony lens, is probably the same lens as this, apart from the fact that the weather sealing's been left off and the optical stabilization has been left off. If you look at the actual two lenses together, this one and also the 85, I have trouble picking them apart. Some people say they can. I have trouble picking it apart, and I really should try it one day and do them side by side and see if there's any difference. I just have to get someone that has an 85. I think if I was buying again, I probably would just buy the Sony 85 1.8. I wouldn't buy the baddest because it's a lot more expensive, and I think the Sony is just as good, apart from the weather sealing and the optical stabilization, which does come in handy if you're shooting video. I very rarely use the 85 for video though, because I'm mostly using the 55 and now the Tamron. Moving up to zoom lenses, I've got obviously the Tamron, which really has changed the way that I shoot. I'm leaving this on my one camera anyway, 90% of the time now, and then my second camera. So I'm usually leaving this on the A7 III. The A9 will have all of my primes that I've been showing you. I'll be switching up between those primes in shoots and weddings. I usually carry two cameras on the belt with me. I use a Spider holster belt, and I'm changing between the two of them. So this is just unbelievable. The macro shots I'm getting out of this now, I very rarely put the macro lens on anymore. I'm just shooting the details, the wedding rings and everything just straight from this, because the close focusing is just super great. Incredibly sharp in the middle. It's not as sharp as the G Master on the edges. But like I said, I don't care about that, because the stuff that I'm shooting, portraits and stuff like that, I don't need that ultimate sharpness on the edges. If I need the sharpness, I can put it in the middle of the frame, and it's actually sharper than the G Master. It's fantastic. I love it. I'm not sure. Someone just said now, why does that Tamron not look so bashed? It's only because it's new. Give me time. It was funny because when Tamron lent me the original one, I had to be so careful with it. I was paranoid because I had to keep thinking, oh my God, I can't treat it like I treat my normal lenses. So this, no doubt, if you look at me in 6 months' time, it's going to look battered and bruised like the others. Another favourite lens I have is obviously the Sony. This one I really do love, and I really do believe this is completely underrated. This lens is that sharp, it's incredible. Yes, it's only f4, but I'm very happy with the weight and the look of this lens. And at 200mm, it blows the background away anyway. So the only time you'd ever get a problem, I suppose, is if you were indoors and it was very low light and you needed an f2.8. That may be where you'd buy the G Master, or when Tamron come out with their new 70-200, you may want to buy that. But at the moment, you know, like I said, this doesn't show that, oh, it does have a bit of marks on there. This is just incredible, and I always take this to a wedding if I want that compression. And you know, I just love this lens to death. And this will be another one that I would never get rid of, even if I got something like the Tamron in the future. It may be that I'll still keep this and use this if I want lightweight to carry around, because it is so much lighter than using a G Master. And that's the thing with me, that I really do want to carry around cameras that have light lenses and that work well, that focus is incredibly fast, really fast. It's very sharp. It's not a G Master, no, but it's more than enough for what I ever need. I used to have the Nikon 70-200 version 2, I think it was, or version 1, that would have been the version 1 in those days, and that was really good, and I never regretted buying the f4 version. But having said that, the Tamron, that I've seen all the reviews, someone mentioned to me this morning when I was discussing something, that they had the Nikon version 2, 70-200, and he sold that lens to buy the Tamron 70-200 because that lens was that sharp. He tried it, so things are looking really good if you did want to move over to the Tamron lens for the 70-200. I hope if it does come out that I'll be able to get early access through Tamron again, and I'll be able to do some videos for you guys. So they're the lenses that I use, you know, and really that I don't really need much else really than what I've got now. It may be, if Tamron do bring out the 100-400, I may consider getting that as a cheap option to get 400mm. But we'll just see. At the moment, I've got more than enough because I don't shoot sports and things like that, or do really any wildlife. So for me, this is why I laugh when photographers say there's not enough lenses. I mean, I've got more than enough than what I could ever use for the type of images that I shoot. And I really have, and there's more and more options coming out there now that you can get if you want to. I mean, Sony now, I've got the 400mm f2.8 if you want to go down that line. There's the 100 to 400. Tamron are coming out with the 150, whatever it was, to 600. So we've got more and more lenses than what we'll ever need. So let me just open up the chat because I'm curious to see what you guys are saying about this before we go on to the next story. I'm just laughing. Someone said I'm not leaning. If I borrow gear, guys, I do treat it well. I'd never treat someone else's gear like I treat mine. Let's keep going down. Coffee time with David. Yes, it is coffee time. Preferably ice. What else have we got? Been debating the 24-105mm over the Tamron because of the 24mm OSS and reach. Yeah, if you need the reach, Sergio, you're better off to get the 24-105. But there's other options you need to consider too. I haven't found the 28 being too not enough wide for me, because if it is, I'll just go to the 16 to 35 anyway. The things that I like about the Tamron is I love shooting around that 85mm range, and then I've got 75 on the Tamron. It's also got 2.8. The other thing that I'm using more and more is that close focusing ability of that lens is what seems to be the game changer for me, that I don't need to put macros on anymore, and you get unbelievable separation when you shoot in like that, doing flowers. I mean, it's incredible. Let me just open this up quickly because I'll just show you, just as an example. It'll just take a minute to open up. Because I'm finding now, like I said, when I'm starting to shoot all of these macros, or they're not macros, but they're close to macros. Now, I don't know how this is going to look on YouTube, but I'll show you. Let me just drag this over. All right, so this was shot. Let me just make this smaller so we can get it in. So as you can see, this was shot with the Tamron 28 to 75 mil. And this is how ridiculously close you can get to things. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's just crazy. And I used to put macros on for this, and I could go even closer than that, by the way. But it's superb that you can do this with a zoom lens, and it gives me complete flexibility now to shoot all of these different things that I can shoot. I'm not sure if I did. I'm just seeing if I did any other macros. I don't think I did on that day. But it's incredibly sharp. Let me just see if I can bring up this. I just want to go to, so we're only looking at the Tamron. I sound like I'm selling it, but I mean, they haven't paid me. I paid for that lens myself. Library. I only want to show you Tamron stuff. Let me go into here. Metadata. And let's go to... You can see the lenses I've used, by the way. So you can see here that I've used the 28 to 75. I've used the 85mm. So you can see I'm not lying about what I'm using. I've used the Tamron 28 to 75. I've used the 85mm 1.8. That's the baddest. I've used the 16 to 35. I've used the 35 1.4. And I've used the 70 to 200. So that's showing you that I'm not lying about which lenses I'm saying I'm actually using. But I just wanted to get it down to this 28 to 75 and just show you the type of results that you'll get. And they really are incredible when you look at them. Let me just come down here. I just wanted to show you sort of the type of results that you're going to get from this lens. Is just, it's stunning. I mean, it really is, it's beautiful. Like, I hate blowing anything up because it always looks terrible on YouTube, but I'll try. But it's super sharp. The skin is show. You can see every single pore of the skin that's coming up. The eyelashes you can sort of see there. It really is just outstanding. And, you know, I just can't say enough when people say that the lens is no good. They're really not looking at it from the way I'm looking at it, because sometimes it can actually be too sharp. Like when you're looking at these images and you're seeing every single pore that's actually there, you can see which eye's been in focus. It's actually that one. You know, it's just beautiful. Like it's stunning. It really is a gorgeous lens. You know, and if you look, I was just capturing moments through here as well. This was one I just did as well that I've just showed. Let me just move that up so you can see. She was against this beautiful wall. Let me see, I'll move that down. So these are all shot with the Tamron. Again, that's there. Detail shots I'll be doing with the Tamron. If you look at these ones, and I'll blow this up, like how sharp it actually is. I'll wait for it to actually come in, but you know, it's ridiculously sharp. It really is ridiculously sharp for the money that you're paying for that lens. It's, you know, it's seriously nuts. Like, don't believe that you have to buy a G Master to get amazing lenses. You don't, you know. And this was another shot that I did there as well, and you know, it's just beautiful. This is straight out of camera, so there's no editing done on this at all. You know, which I think is lovely, the image itself. I'll show you the separation because you can see here, getting in close to the bride. You can see here what's happened. Because you can get so close to the subject, you get amazing fall off that's coming from the subject. You know, and it works fantastic in that way. Again, this was doing ones where they're just walking and it was tracking them along the way. You can see here how we've just stopped the traffic actually, walked into the middle of the road, and we're doing stuff that's like that, where you can see how it's tracking them moving forward, kept focus brilliantly. Again, you can see Kerry actually working here. She's on the side there with the Profoto B10. I'm on the other side of the lake lighting them up. So you can see her there. And then basically I just retouch her out. So that's the original, and then you can see her there where I've retouched her out. That was another one where she was standing in the same place over here. And to show you how they look for landscapes, this was the amazing location that they'd set this up down the bottom of this massive hill. It was an amazing wedding that I did. And these are ones showing landscapes. So these were shot at 28mm, and it'll give you an idea about how they look sort of for these type of shots. But you know, it's just great. I mean, I can't say how much to you I love it. I really do. So let me come back to this before we move on to the next story. Mick said, nice to see you, David. Greetings from Sydney. Lovely 21 here today. I'll have to come up to Sydney to meet you, all you guys, soon. Mike, I'd love to have a meet-up up there. Trevor said, there's no way the 28 f2 is better lens than the 55mm. I suppose they're talking about, what are they saying? They gave that lens the best prime single focal length. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know why they've chosen that over the 55. Perhaps it was cost, Trev. It could be that. The only drawback is sometimes I crave something faster like the 2.8 version, and it can be a bit heavy if you use it on a gimbal. Yeah, I mean, any 2.8 lens is going to weigh much more. That's what I love about the Tamron so much, though. It's so light. And the G Master 24 is an incredibly light lens. I mean, they've done some voodoo with that lens, haven't they? That's probably why I'll get that lens somewhere down the line. Mark said, yeah, they do list GM glass, but they miss out on the top spot because of cost and I guess weight. Jim said, my favourite lens is the 70-200 2.8 GM. I use it more than my Zeiss 55 and my 85 1.4. I used to be that way too, Jim. I used to put my 70-200 on all the time, and now I mostly shoot with the 85 if I'm dealing with portraits. Daniel says, since I'm getting into weddings, would you recommend getting two primes, 35 and 85, or zooms? I've heard a lot of reasoning for both sides. Well, I mostly did shoot with the 85 and the 35, and I still do use those on one camera. I'm lucky that I've got both cameras. One lens, if I could just have one lens to do weddings, it would be the Tamron 28-75. But like I just showed you in those clips that I'm using my 35 1.4 and I'm using my 55, my 85 all the time. So I would still be shooting those primes because I love those lenses, and I'll do the special shots with those primes. And that's the way that I tend to work. You know, the second that the bride sits down and I do beautiful shots with her, I'll be using the 85 Batis. So I'd still say yes, you could easily shoot a wedding with a 35 and an 85. The only area you'd come unstuck is if you need something wider, like if you were doing really big group shots and you can't step back enough, 35 may not be wide enough. Brandon says, debating on after builds, saving for the 70-200 f4 or the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 and then sell my Zeiss 2470. Yeah, that's one lens that I did sell, Brandon. I did have the 2470 f4 and I sold that lens. It was okay. It's not a patch on the Tamron though. You just have to work out whether you're shooting more at what focal length you're shooting at. Then you can make a decision on whether you go for the 70-200 or the 28-75. But both of those lenses are stellar. You know, they really are. I'd probably use my 28-75 more though, because that fits more within the range that I'll use. But as I just showed you, I still use my 70-200. Trev says, the lens that fits your shooting style. If you like shooting primes, don't buy a zoom just because you think you should. Exactly. Daniel says, thanks. I've mostly shot commercials and narrative shots using primes before, but I thought I would need to get a zoom telephoto because that's what most people use. No, you don't have to, Daniel. You buy what you like. I shot, until I got the Tamron recently, everything I was shooting was with primes. I'd still use the 70-200 f4 and the 16-35, but probably 80% or even more of my wedding was with the 35 and the 85. So you can easily do it with primes. I'm just going to be careful when I fill this coffee cup up that it's not shown. I go like this, you watch. Woo! I love it. Mark says, I have the 12 to 24G, amazing glass. It's super light, but also super expensive. Yes, that is an amazing lens, Mark. It really is. If I didn't have that 10 to 18, I probably would get that. I'm still thinking about eventually getting a really wide angle prime, but I haven't found the one I want yet. Trevor says, are you hard on your lenses? They seem a bit worn. Yes, I discussed that earlier. Yeah, they are. But like I've said to people, if I borrow lenses, I treat them like you would if it was a brand new lens, and, you know, I'm very, very careful with them. I certainly wouldn't treat a borrowed lens the same way, even a rented lens. You have to be careful or you'll have to pay. I mainly do video, which is why I wasn't sure for wedding stills. Yep, primes are fine. Hope you like pics. Said the Sony 10 to 18 f4 will work on the... Yes, it will. Like I said, it will work on the A7 III from 12mm to 16. If you go to 10, it crops. You get a black border because it's too wide for the sensor. But at 12 to 16, it works fine. Or you can just go into Super 35 mode. But the problem is if you go to Super 35 mode on an A7 III, you get about an 11 megapixel file. If you use it on 12 on full frame, you get the full 23 megapixel or whatever it is, 24 megapixel. But yes, it will work on the... The beauty is with Sony, and this is the great thing. This is why it's harder to go to Fuji or Panasonic and things like that, because the beauty with Sony is that the lenses that you buy for APS-C will also work on full frame. So that's one of the best things about Sony, and I love that they give you that option. And it really is a fantastic option because you can buy full frame glass and stick it on your APS-C. And then it means then you can step up to full frame and you don't have to buy all new lenses. And that's one of the best things about the Sony system. It really is great. A lens in a sock, yeah, a lot of people do that. Daniel said, wow, how? I'll figure out what focal lengths I want for my primes, then probably buy the Sigma 31.4 for the 50-ish, Sigma 16 for the 24 to 30-ish, and the 50 for the 75 to 80-ish. Yeah. I still think if you're looking at primes though, Daniel, I'd get the Sony 85 1.8. That's a great price lens, and it's also amazingly good. I think it's probably one of the best lenses out there. I just haven't got it because I have the Batis. The only reason why I bought that was because at the time, there was no other, and this is in pretty good nick, isn't it? It's amazing when you think the use that that's had and how good nick it's in compared to the Sony stuff. That's amazing. I've just looked at that. But really, they're so smooth that there's not really much that can get damaged, I think. Like, the design is beautiful. But the only reason why I bought that, because at the time, there was no other 85 that was available. That was the only one. If I was buying now, I'd buy the Sony 85 1.8 and save the money. Mark said, oh my God, not lending you my 85. I promised Mark I'd look after it. Julio said, finally made it. Help me decide, Lolu says, help me decide between the Sigma 85 and the 105 1.4. Well, I can't really, Lolu. It depends on what you shoot more. I mean, the problem is the 105 may be way too tight in a lot of scenarios to shoot. That's the problem with it. Like, if you're using it indoors and you're doing, say, beautiful portraits indoors, you may not have enough room to step back. That's the problem. So if you're talking about having just one of those lenses, I'd get the 85. See, for me, I'd still love something like the 105 or the 135. But I already have the 85 and I wouldn't get rid of that due to the fact that if I'm in a tighter situation, I can still use it indoors. So I hope that sort of makes sense to you. The 105 may be too tight in a lot of places to use it. What's your EJ? Oh, that's asking MJ, what's your EJ? Don't forget, I'm putting it in again, guys. DOASTLER. Make sure you follow me on Instagram because I'll follow you back. If I don't, if I miss it, just message me and then I will. Daniel says, by the way, love the community here so far. No pretentiousness and no one is taking themselves too seriously. And that's true. Look, like I said, this is like a bunch of mates all sitting together and I love that aspect of it. DP Review listed the G Masters in the grouping. Price is no object. Oh, okay. Anybody else bought the 2470 kit while your Tamron lens was on back order and now you can sell it? There's 1,000 of them on eBay. Yeah, there would be too, because a lot of people were buying the A7 III with that 24/7 because it was the only way you could buy the A7 III at the time. And yeah, you'd have trouble probably selling it. Daniel said, just moved to Melbourne, currently working in Michael's cameras and still building up my portfolios and skills. That's fantastic. That's where I buy all my stuff from, Daniel. Michael's is great. Trev says the 55 1.8 is stellar. I agree. Jim Penn says thumbs up all the time. Help the host buy more beer. Yeah, please, if you could. I really do appreciate getting thumbs up. It does make a big difference. Particularly with letting people see that I'm online. Daniel says, when I get the chance, I'll be binge watching the content. Van says, Sony 55 is my next lens, and I don't blame you. That's amazing, that lens. Mark says, I agree, the 55 1.8, and it has the same sharpness as the 85 1.8. MJ says, got to go. Have a good night. Good night, mate. We're nearly down the bottom, and then I'll continue. I'll jump down. Where'd it go to? Brandon says, tons of lenses, David. Hope there's insurance for everything. Yeah, I've got everything insured. I'm not silly, yeah. I have every bit of gear that I've got insured because you never know. Someone may walk off with my bag or anything. It's locked in the studio, though. I have two massive, huge steel cabinets that they get locked up in there in the evening or when I'm not using them. When I get a chance, I'll binge watch your content. Let me keep going down. People who steal camera gear are the lowest. I know, they're mongrels, but there's always people out there that will do it. Liam says, having a hard time framing portraits with the 35mm focal length, full frame. In what way are you having trouble? I love the 35 focal length. You've just got to make sure with anything that starts to get wider that you don't put them too close to the edges, that they need to be a little bit more in the center because you will start to get distortion. 35 is not too bad. Anything wider than that, though, you will get distortion if you put them on the outside of the lens. Um, Oh, yeah, I saw that mermaid shot. They look good. 24/7 GM is great. That's a great lens, Mark, though. I mean, yeah, it's a terrific lens. Let me just scroll down. I want that Tamron 70-200 too bad. So do I. I hope it'll be released soon. Langston says, I wonder how Sony feels about Tamron eating sales in this area. Well, I don't think they're worried about it, Langston, because they own part of Tamron anyway, and it sells more bodies. So, you know, they're not worried about that at all, and I think it probably helps them. I want to scroll down because we need to continue on because we've already been on nearly an hour and we've got through one story. David, can Sony just announce a new APS-C camera? I know, I wish they so would, honestly. Basically, use 3 lenses for everything. I have multiple makes of lenses, but basically all the same length. And you'll notice too that everything I've got can back up. So if I have an issue with any lenses, I've always got something that I can move to as a replacement lens. And that's what you've got to make sure when you're doing weddings. For fisheye fun, anything like the Sigma 15 2.8 DX fisheye for Sony, this lens is optically superior. No, there's nothing like that, but you can obviously use all those lenses with adapters. The Central Light said the 55 1.8 and the 24 105 is the favourite lenses. I'm just scrolling down to see if we can keep going. Beautiful colour on those photos. Thank you so much. I know they talk about Sony's colour science, honestly. Can you think of any reason not to shoot extended ISO on the low ISO, i.e. 50 ISO? I've heard that the highlights can suffer from low end. It does affect quality, Jason. I usually always stick to 100 ISO. I don't usually go underneath because there is a little bit of a quality loss, a little bit. You'd have to test yourself to see whether you're happy with doing that. I don't do it. I stick to 100 ISO and I don't go below that. Lowell says Sony needs to look into new GM lenses with more custom buttons and a couple of programmable rings also. What else have we got? Brad said, do you ever feel stuck in a creative rut? No, never. I'm always keen about shooting, Rad, and I understand people do get that. I'm lucky in the fact that I never ever get that way about shooting. I just love shooting so much that I never get sick of it. And I never have to sort of motivate myself to get out there and do something. I always love doing it. I understand some people can get that though. I don't know why I've never suffered from it. I'm not sure, but I don't. All right, guys, we're going to go down to the next story. I wanted to discuss this with you. October, because this is interesting. We're going to have a quick chat about this. October full-frame mirrorless sales is showing that Sony now have 67%, Canon have 22%, and Nikon have 10%. Now, this is not good news in one way because early on, I think Sony had 99.5%. If you're talking about it here, it says there is a big impact. Also, Sony has not introduced a new full-frame camera at Photokina or a Photo Plus. It will be interesting to see if Canon and Nikon will be able to match Sony sales in 2019. Now, what's happening? It's saying that I think early on this year, Sony full-frame mirrorless share has dropped from 99.5%. They were at that stage. So there's a couple of reasons about this. Just let me have a quick coffee. I think what this is showing, and I'll just go through those figures again. Sony is 67%, Canon is 22%, and Nikon is 10%. Now, there's a couple of things at play here that I wanted to talk to you about. And I'll put the links to these at the end, so you'll be able to go to this and have a look at the end of this. But obviously, the Canon EOS-R and the Nikon Z cameras have had an impact on the number of full-frame mirrorless sales. Because before, there was nothing in the competition for Sony to have in this full-frame mirrorless market. So naturally, Sony had this massive market share. So there has been a hit on Sony because of that. And people, obviously, if you were already in the Canon realm, you would stick with Canon probably. And the same as if you were with Nikon, you would probably stick with Nikon. Now, even though those releases, particularly the Canon, really, I didn't think was that good. And even the Nikon having the one card slot, it just seems to show that people that are coming into that mirrorless world don't really care about that. So if you're not a professional, it probably doesn't hurt you by only having one card slot, because I would think a lot of people that are just coming into the marketplace would just hear Canon's name or Nikon's name, and then they would just jump in there and not worry about having one card slot or better video features or whatever was there. They only really care about getting into those brand names. And the other big thing as well, and this is what we can talk about in the chat in a minute, is that Sony haven't released another full-frame camera at the moment to combat those two new releases. Yes, the A7 III has been out and it's still new, but it's been out for a while now. There's been nothing new at all on the Sony side of things. And I think I think that's a problem with Sony, that they are going to have to answer this shortly, or they're going to start losing that foundation that they've actually got. And so it's a bit of a problem, I think. Remember, I think you're probably going to find we've continually hearing that they were going to release the A7S III, and I've got a feeling now that that's not going to be until NAB next year. We still are hoping to get an A7000 before Christmas, but there's not been any more rumblings about that, and Christmas is getting pretty close. So, you know, if they make an announcement, there's still usually a lead-in time, that you think that if they were going to announce an A7000, that would have already been announced now, because there may be a 4-week or... See, I'm burping from the coffee. There's usually a 4 to 6 week wait or something like that, which basically takes you to Christmas. So I'm now not convinced that we're going to see an A7000 before Christmas either. So it's a bit of a problem, and I think the numbers are now starting to show that we're suffering a little bit. Sony are suffering a little bit because they are losing sales, and I'm wondering whether you think, are Sony worried about this, do you think, or do you think they have to bring out something to combat these new cameras? I'm still not sure whether Sony are waiting for Canon to release their high-end mirrorless, or for Panasonic to release their mirrorless cameras, or at least announce exactly what's going to be in them, and then drop this new camera to make sure that they're not beaten by these companies. But they are starting to lose sales. So I'd love to know what you think about that. So I'm going to open up the chat just to see if anyone's commenting about these sales. When you reach a point where you go to another story in the chat, put text such as break 1, break 2, etc. Sip beer. Well, what I do is I just run from it at the end and then put in where each story starts, Jim. I put down below... in a timeline, so everything's listed in a timeline when the stories change. Jason said, those numbers are irrelevant without knowing the size growth of mirrorless camera. Well, I think Sony still said that they had, about 3 or 6% growth. So Sony is still growing. They're not saying that here, but I know Sony in their last article, I think I posted that in a live show, it might have been 2 episodes back or something. But Sony still had 6% growth, which was one of the few that were actually growing. And that was overall, though, with the APS-C and mirrorless and full frame. But they are still growing. But it still means to me that the numbers, they still have had an impact. I think this will change, though, when Sony release their new cameras. You'll probably find that Sony will jump right back up again. What else have we got? James said, is there an app for the Sony A7R III on iPhone that works better than the Sony app, looking for camera control, remote shutter, etc.? I don't think there's anything that has all of that, but there is another app on their field monitor, which I've got. Daniel does a lot of work with that, which Mark has said a bit further down the line there, down here. Daniel's actually said there, field monitor works really well, especially for video, but I don't think it has time-lapse. Sony know about that because they have mentioned that before, and they realise that a lot of people are upset about them taking the time-lapse out. So hopefully the newer cameras will have that put back in. There's probably no reason why they couldn't add it back in firmware. What else have we got? Mark says, James, look at what Daniel has in regards to that on his YouTube. Yeah, he does. He has a lot of stuff about that on there. James said by mid-19 we could see an A9 II, and the A9 was released 20 months ago. I don't think we're going to see an A9 II next year. I think that will be for the Olympics the following year. I don't think there's any way we'll see a new A9 next year. We'll probably see an A7R4 next year. That's what I'm predicting that we'll see. And that's probably what I'll buy to replace my A7R2. So we'll have an A7R4, I believe, and we'll have the A7S3. Obviously an A7000, but I think the A9 will be released a year after for the Olympics, perhaps with a global shutter. We don't know, but I think that's going to be an Olympics release. Brandon says, the Sigma Art 14 1.8 is great, but it's a heavy lens. Yes, it is. Herd says, Sony doesn't have to worry about the A7R3 and the A9 are better than all cameras out there. Yes, I agree with you. They are better, but I'm just hoping sales don't start to drop. I really am looking forward for Sony to release something else. I'm just getting a bit impatient. Hart says, on the Facebook group, members said the chart was only for Japan. Okay, well, that's interesting. It did have Japanese on it, obviously. Her said, I just got my first Sony by Boring Olympus. You're going to love it. Jim said, I meant the makers for the chat so you can find where you left off. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. That's a good idea, actually, Jim. Yeah, I should do that in there, shouldn't I? So I can tell. Rob's Travel Adventure said, would be nice if they would at least release the specs for the A7000. I don't know why there's been such a hold-up for that, Rob, and I agree with you. I'm getting impatient as well. Sniper V says, Canon, Canicon are simply bigger names in the camera industry. They are presented in the retail market more than Sony. Even the Best Buy, only certain stores actually carry the Sony A7. Well, it's changed here because I notice now in a lot of the camera stores here that Sony are very prominent in the displays. So they're not being held back anymore. They really are displayed prominently. So I don't think that's such a case here as it is elsewhere. Brandon said it's more, James Henry, it's more equipment in the bag, but the MIPS adapter is pretty good and has more feature to your shooting handbag. Sniper V says, where you can find entry-level Canons in Targets and Walmarts. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, you won't find those. Yeah, I agree with you there. The camera shops here, though, the Sony stuff is very prevalent. Jim said, thumbs up all so David can have a custom Fangirl t-shirt made for Susie. All right, let's go next story. I'm just putting it in there. Next story. Now, I wanted to talk about this because this is really interesting. Let me see if I can reduce this size down, though. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this was because I just want to show. This is it Yongnuo Yongnuo? I can't pronounce it anyway. The YN450 Mirrorless camera. It's obviously a 1/3 sensor. It's Android OS, EF lenses, and it is 4K. Now, look, I'm not saying that this camera at the moment is any good, but we'll have to wait. What is it saying? It's saying inside the camera is a 16 megapixel 1/3 sensor alongside a Qualcomm 8-core processor. The camera will run Android 7.1, so it is old in the Android department, and have 33 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, and up to 32 gigabytes of expandable storage. So that's good because they're actually saying it's got internal storage and expandable storage. So it's interesting how whether it can shoot to both of those at the same time, that's one thing that we'd have to find, I suppose, or whether you can just back up to that. I mean, eventually it will be that you could get something like that and it will back up to it at the same time as shooting. It might do that now, I'm not sure. It's a 5-inch 1080p display. Other features and specs include a GPS, a 3.5 mic, headphone jack, dual LED flashes, and a 4000 mAh battery. Now, you're going to look down and I'll show you sort of what this looks like, and it is a bit, I don't know whether I want to hold a phone with a massive lens on it like that, but it gives you an idea. But the reason why I wanted to share this was because of a couple of things that, and I hope Sony listens, but when you think about it, there's no better interface than what's on a phone, is there? I mean, the phone interfaces are by far the best things that you could ever look at when you're dealing with interfaces. So wouldn't it be fantastic if Sony could come out with basically like that, which is basically like the Blackmagic camera, isn't it, when you think about it? But wouldn't it be fantastic if Sony could come out, because Sony make great phones. I don't use Sony, but they do make great phones with great interfaces. Now, wouldn't it be fantastic if you could have your phone as the interface at the back? Now, it doesn't even have to be as big as these. It could be the same, like it's saying, a smaller screen. But if you could have that touch interface on the back of your phone, how wonderful would it be to control the camera if you could basically, someone's saying about Candy Crush, if you could basically just change your exposure by dragging up and down and doing all these other things, clicking to get your focus perfectly, because at the moment the Sony touchscreens aren't very good. I mean, I don't mind the autofocus. I think works very well, and I use it all the time on the A7 III and the A9, but it's nowhere near as responsive as if you're using, say, the camera app on these phones. Wouldn't it be brilliant if you can get this sort of interface on a camera? And there's no reason why they can't give you an amazing interface. Now, it doesn't have to make phone calls, obviously, but do you agree with that? I mean, is it something that interests you? I really think that Sony particularly could up their game with interface on the camera, and it would be fantastic if they could give us something like that to work. When I used the Blackmagic camera the other day, I mean, I love the interface. At the back was brilliant. Even though it was massive, the interface was still gorgeous to use. And when you think about it now, we're all used to that type of interface. And it would be fantastic if you could use it. Now, I'm not saying get rid of all the dials, because I don't like that. I love the control dials. Like, I love having the A9 having all of these dials that are on the top, because I like the analog feel, and that's why I also love the Fuji cameras so much. The interface is so good. But having said that, there's no reason why you can't double everything up and have everything on the back screen if you want to work that way. And, you know, it's just something that I don't understand why Sony don't do it. Let's hope with the A7000 that they bring out an amazing screen that is like that, like more like their phones, and they give us these amazing touch features and zoom features, you know, being able to just go like that to zoom in, check your focus, and things like that they really could improve on what we've got so far. And that may be one thing that Sony will give us that we don't know about yet. I mean, we can hope. So let's open that up to the chat, because I'd love to know what you guys think about that. So where did I go from? Because now I've seen that thing where I've got that next story. It worked. How good was that? Well done. Her said Best Buy in New Jersey has way more Sony stuff than Nikon. Interesting. Mark Frost says Mavica. Yeah, it is sort of like that, isn't it? Laugh out loud, this bad boy raises all kind of psychological questions. I don't like the design of that at all. I mean, I don't think it'd be nice to hold. It would be cumbersome, and that's why I'm saying I'd love to see that type of interface, though, on a full frame camera, like what we get with the A9 or the A7 III. That's what I'm trying to say to you. I'm just laughing. I hope you like Pixay new topic. I love it. Wow, the iPhone 11. Haas says, over here, Canon and Nikon are still dominant in the stores, and it's almost $219, and people still consider the big digital SLRs like professional cameras. Wow, see, it is. They are selling a lot better here in Australia. I mean, Sony is quite supported here. That's why I'm a bit disappointed. I think that's why they've asked for these 20 people to do training and stuff. So Sony now have realised in Australia that they need to lift their game, I think. Can it make phone calls? It doesn't say. Yeah, I don't think it can. I don't think it has a chip in it. Langston said, strip out the Android and keep the computation photography bits. Things could get very interesting. And I'm going to make a talk about that shortly, actually, Langston. Talking about this computational stuff. I'm going to do a video. I might do that over the weekend. But you're right. Strip down Android iOS or OS. Hers says, if it can play Crush Candy, I'll buy it. I love it. Haas says, Langston, are you a lawyer? Haha, that was a good one. Brandon said, hey, did they come out with something like that, David, DSC QX10? I'm not sure what that is. Langston said, no, just a software engineer whose job is commonly is to cram Android into odd places. Oh, okay. Well, when you think it's running Android, isn't it, on the A6500 and the A7R2? That's how you got the Play Memories apps on those phones, because it is running a version of Android. I think that's what Sony wanted to get rid of. No good for night shooting. The screen will be just too bright. Yeah, but perhaps you could dim it and then use... That's why I'm saying I'd still want the EVF. And this is why when I was showing that I'd want this basically to be... When I put my phone, I'd want this to be basically like this. So I still would want my EVF there as well. Because, like you said, if you're dealing with really bright... If when I'm doing weddings and things like that outdoors, I'm always using the EVF than I am with the LCD. So I don't want to get rid of this. And that's what I found with the Blackmagic would be a problem. Because if you can't use an EVF on a bright day, you're going to struggle to see that screen. And that's what I don't want to get rid of. Pinch zoom would be sweet. I agree. iOS for Sony. Hey, Siri, focus on that squirrel and shoot. We may get to that one day, I'm telling you. Sony's back screen resolution and touch functionality is pathetic compared to the competition. The Sony phone apps are terrible as well. Yeah, the Canon particularly is a much nicer, interface. And you compare it to the GH5. I loved using the GH5 interface on the back of that, the Panasonic. It was brilliant. I really wish Sony would up their game for interfaces, that's for sure. And they can do it because they make phones. There's no reason why Sony can't give us an amazing touch interface. Indeed, like an interface like your smartphone is definitely the way to go. Langston said, I have a DJI Osmo which plugs into my phone and the UI and controls are on the phone. It's an interesting concept for sure, but I don't want a 1K touchscreen. People are laughing at the design, but it may well end up being like that in future cameras. It may be, you just don't know. The touchscreen should be better on the camera. They have the technology they have, and they're just holding back at this stage. That's obvious that they're holding back at this stage. Wasn't there a camera announced that you can edit photos on? Yes, that was the Zeiss one. I don't know how well it's going to work, but that was the Zeiss one. But the problem with the Zeiss is it has an internal SSD. It doesn't have any backup, so you haven't got any way to put SD cards or another backup solution in there. I'm pretty sure there was no EVF, things like that. Studio 41 said, hi. Jim Pence says, where did you write that in assembler? Wink, I'm not sure what they was talking about is assembling. Sony APS-C crop and clear zoom gives your primes full possible focal lengths. That's right. It's like I said, it's very underutilized, that clear image zoom. I use that all the time. Cody says, yes, cell phone-like interface and better apps. We could all do amazing time-lapse and cool star trails. And that's exactly right. And I think that was the last story. So let's open it up. I don't know how many questions you've got, but let's open it up to questions. And we'll see how we go from there. Because I'll leave it for a few minutes. How long have we been going? 1 hour 23, 2? Doesn't matter. I mean, I'll stay here sort of for a while. But let's see if you have any questions before. If you don't, I'm happy to call it a day. It all depends on you. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think of some questions. You may want to talk about, well, anything. You might want to talk about lenses that we discussed earlier on, color theory, if you like, or color, whatever. While we're waiting, guys, please, if you can, big thumbs up would be fantastic. Oh, don't forget to, just let me go to photography, videography school. Make sure, too, that if you can, join me in this group because I'd love you to join us there. Photography, videography. You've got to put the and that way, though. If you don't put the and in, you won't find it because people are making the mistake and they're typing and. It has to be the at, like that, the and that way. We're almost up to 3,000 subscribers now, I've noticed. And it really is starting to grow very, very fast. This week's task is overpowering the sun. And if you look at some of the actual images that people have submitted here, there's stacks that people are starting to put in now. There's 16 more, actually. You can sort of see the images. Now, they'll be put as the header in the page for the week. So I end up putting them on the header for the week. So basically, everyone just submits whatever they like, as long as it fits that theme, and then I choose the theme. introducing themselves. We've got stacks of stuff in here. You can see Oreo has shared the link that I'm talking about today, and people are having a discussion about that, talking about the camera sales. Lex, like I said, it's just great. We've got some amazing photographers in there. A lot of people are sharing videos now as well, because I want this to be video as well. Stuff's coming in all the time. So please join us there. This is a great place to ask questions and things like that. Like, I definitely prefer questions to be asked through here than, say, through my local Instagram, which can be a bit hard to answer in and stuff like that. So please join us there if you can. Let me come back to questions and we'll see how we go. Cody says, yes, cell phone-like interface, better apps. Oh no, I really wish we could get better apps, that's for sure. Jim said, I'm in Minnesota, too freaking cold for a touch screen. You can get the gloves though, can't you? That you can go through the gloves. Remember, my idea though is to still have the controls though. So you still want all the analog controls. The touch screen is only going to be the extra thing at the back, a full touch screen. Dave said, before designing new interface, Sony should fire the guy who did their menu system. I don't find the menu system that bad at all, Dave. I quite like it, but perhaps I'm one of the few. Let me know in the chat whether you guys agree with that, but I don't find the interface bad at all. I struggle when I go back to Canon and Nikon now. And like I've said to people before, I very rarely touch the user interface, because everything for me is on the quick keys and also the fast menus, stuff like that. So I very rarely go into it anymore, but yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Langston said, I have the opposite experience because I worked in production and we're not using Canon or Nikon to shoot, so Sony was burned into my head as a professional young age. Talking about the menus, well, I don't have a trouble with it either. I know some people do, they don't like it, but I don't mind them. Davey said, not related to the video topic, but how did you get into video? Well, video, are you talking about for my work? Well, really, I remember I was just a photographer. I just did photography for years, and I only decided to add video because I could see the writing on the wall of where I believe the future was going to be in photography. I know a lot of photographers don't like me saying this, but I think photography as a standalone job is going to be extinct in a few years. When I say a few years, I don't mean in the distant future, I mean the near future. I think you're going to have to do video and stills at the same time. Remember, children that are growing up with using iPhones and all these technologies like Instagram and all of these other things where they're doing video every day of themselves. Selfies, including video. Thank you so much, Jim. Really appreciate that. They're doing things like that every day. And unless you sort of switch on to that, and that's going to be your market in the next few years, the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to be the people you're going to have to sell to. They're not going to want just a still image. They're going to want a still image with video or even interacting at the same time. That's why I keep mentioning Fusion so much. So I've forced myself to learn it over the last 2 years. I've been really concentrating on it a lot. I'm still learning, but I'm getting better and better at it. And there is a lot to learn, particularly in the audio side of things. But I've got better and better at it, and now I'm quite confident when I do it. And it's added a massive amount of work or people booking me for weddings. So that's been one great thing. I really encourage all of you to start to learn video. And that's why I call that Facebook group Photography and Videography School, because I want to make sure more people understand that videography is going to be becoming more and more important. And I don't want you guys, particularly, like I said, you guys are like a bunch of mates to me. I don't want you guys to be left behind. And I think, don't put blinkers on, guys, and think, I'm going to be safe. I don't have to worry. It will have an effect on you sooner or later. The sooner you learn it, the sooner you can incorporate video and stills into your workflow. And it's going to be the same for videographers. They're not going to be able to just offer video. They're going to also get clients that are going to say to them, but I want stills as well as part of this. So it's things that you've got to consider, and you really have to be careful and start to move down that line. There's other things coming into play as well. When these cameras get so good, and it will happen eventually, when you can take stills from an 8K still and then you can manipulate that still. That can change things dramatically for a still photographer. Now, yes, you can't use flash, but for everything else, if you've got an 8K still, you've then got that you can grab out of a video, you're getting a massive file that you can work with, and then you can capture that perfect moment. So you may be better off to learn these video skills now. So I'm saying you've got to think of the future. I've always prided myself on being ahead of the game, and I think you guys should too. I really would be concentrating on, obviously you have to learn one skill at a time. You can't learn both at the same time. So you have to say to yourself, well, yes, as soon as I'm confident enough in my still photography, I'm then going to let that go and then start to concentrate on videography and learn to do both. And I think you'll be a much better photographer for it, and you'll get much more work. Why can't you use flash in silent mode? Because there's no shutter, there's no sync. That's the problem. You need a global shutter to be able to do that, and it's not available yet. You're going to have to wait. That will come out eventually, but you can't use it because a flash needs to sync with the camera, and when it's in silent mode, that doesn't happen. Can you guys help me using Sony a6500 or a Sony a7 III? Help, please. Do you mean to buy one? I'd get the a6500 over the a7 II. There's a lot of specials out at the moment for the a7 II. I wouldn't be buying that camera. There is a massive difference in using something like even the a6500 to an a7 II. The focusing particularly is very... Look, it's usable, but it's nowhere near what an a6500 is, or particularly an a7 III. I would save up until you can get the a7 III. I wouldn't be buying an a7 II at this stage. Can that camera do fake bokeh like the iPhone? Yeah, I wonder. And I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do a discussion about that shortly, because I think it's important. I also own the 16 to 35G for Sony, and I agree it's sharp, as you said. Can the distortion be totally removed in Lightroom or Capture One? Not completely, no. I tend to take it into Photoshop and manually do it if distortion's an issue. And I'll do it that way. It can be made better in Lightroom, but you can never get rid of it totally, so I do it in Photoshop if it's a real issue. You know, if you're getting buildings that are really tilting, I'll start to do it in Photoshop and manipulate them manually, and that's the way I tend to do distortion. Once you figure out the Sony menu, you can fly the space shuttle. Haas says, would you buy a camera in the next year or two, or are you satisfied with the A9? Well, I still need another video camera, Has, so that's why I'm saying I'm waiting for an A7000 or an A7S II. I only need one. I'll get the next camera. If an A7R4 came out, I may purchase it sometime later next year. But I don't really need another stills camera at this moment. I'm happy with the A7 III and the A9 and my A7R II. So I'm quite happy with that at the moment. I may get the A9 II when it's released the following year. We won't see another A9 next year. I doubt that very much. I think it'll be 2020. But I certainly don't need it at the moment. Have you ever used the lower 0D lens? Yes, I have. They're amazing. Really beautiful lenses. Manual focus, but really great lenses. Mark says, have you heard of the new Moza Air 2? I've heard of it, Mark. I haven't used it, though. I'd love to get my hands on that to try it out. Langston said, understood brand name can be powerful. Exactly, it can be. Mark said, create your own list in the Star tab. That's what I do. I always create my own list of everything I use in that Star tab. Remember, on the new cameras, in the menu up the top, you've got, at the end there, you've got the Star menu. Well, let me go up. You've got the Star menu, which puts all of your most used things in there. Like I've got flash compensation, E-front curtain shut off. I really should take that off because I don't really need to do it. With the Profoto stuff, I never have syncing issues, so I don't really need that. You need that if you're shooting over 1,000th of a second. You have to turn that off, otherwise you get a light ban, but you don't seem to get it with the Profoto. I've got Finder Monitor on-off because if I'm doing video, they can be switching, it can be annoying. Live view settings displays I've got on there, S&Q settings and file format. So they're everything that I've got on the back of mine. there. So they're the ones that I'm tending to have on the back screen. And like I said, you can put whatever you like in there. You've got 2 pages that you can put stuff in, and it works great. And like I said, between that and having your little FN menu, which gives you the menu down the bottom that you can put stuff in, I very rarely ever change anything than what I've got for those 2 things. So, you know, it works brilliantly, and it works so good. Cody says, what is your take on Lightroom presets? I've got a stack of them, but I never use them, Cody. I never use them at all. I don't even know where I got them. I think I had a Lindsay Andler one and Salsa Cotta, I think, which I paid for, but I've never used them. I'm never going to buy them again. I just don't use them because I like to do it the way I like, you know, the way I do it. Nearly every single YouTuber or photographer is selling them. But, yeah, it's not something I ever want to do. I mean, I don't ever want to do that stuff. I mean, you're better off to get your own style and really paying for them. Like, I mean, I did, but I regret doing it now because they're just things that I could have just done myself anyway. And that's the thing with those presets. It's only someone playing around with the sliders and then saving it, and then they're selling it to you. And then they're shilling it all through YouTube. But I don't use them. I never use them. I don't ever use presets. Thank you so much, Jin. Really appreciate that. That one Chinese guy said, for landscape and photography, astrophotography, maybe environmental portraits, 24 GM or the 16 to 35 GM, wider aperture or wider focal length. I'd get the 24 GM, I think. That's wide enough for me. I used to have the 24, I think it was a Samyang lens. I can't remember which one it was. I had something like that I used to use for astrophotography. It depends. 16 to 35 would also be really nice as well. But obviously having a 1.4 aperture, you can use it for other things as well. Lovely and lightweight. I'd probably go for the 24 GM. Dolphite said, I thought that a bit as well. I think cell phone technology is evolving faster than professional cameras. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to have a discussion about that soon in a video. Video is what the young want. Very true, Studio, it is. It really is. And that's why I'm saying if you don't start to think about it, you're going to get left behind. Bikes Vision Scotland said, I think that the Sony camera releases in 1920 will amaze us all and shock their competition. Fingers crossed. I so hope so. Ken said, is the new Sony G Master 24 1.8 that much better than the Sony 28 f2? Yes. From what I've seen, it certainly is. Look, the 1.4 is a massive difference. You're talking about much better glass. I mean, that's still a good lens, but the G Master is in another league. Venom said, I was this close to buying the A7 II until you said it would be better to get an A6 500 or get the A7 III. Gals, I didn't pull the trigger on it. Yeah, I wouldn't buy the A7 II now. I just would not buy that camera now. Low light focusing is not good. Not good at all. It's quite slow now compared. I never realised how bad it was until I got the A7 III. And then you realise how slow the A7 II actually is. It's very dated now. The problem is that's quite old technology now, and it's very dated. I'd get the A6 500 over that. But I'd save up and get the A7 III over that. Langston said, star menu for the win. Yeah, it is. It's great. No banding with Profoto lights. No, I don't get them, Langston. There must be something with the timing on that you don't... I never have to turn off that curtain sync. I have to do it with these... And it's interesting because I have to do it with my Sony speed lights if I'm running crazy shutter speeds. The B1, I've never ever... And the B10, I've never ever had to change the... sync. It just seems to work. Mark said, read the star tab. You can actually create more pages. Yes, you can. Yeah, you actually can. I just don't need more than what I've got in there, but you can. That's right. Jim said, thumbs up, all to help David pay for a lens caddy so they look new for a long time. Thanks, Jim. Jerry said, I find I'm asking to shoot as much video as photos all the time. I have had to stay on top of both and actually enjoy the ability to get both. It's great fun. I love shooting video. I really do enjoy doing it now. It's a lot more work, but it's great fun. Java said, "Hi David, as a cancer survivor with chemo, nerve damage in my hands and fingers, I appreciate Sony ergonomics. Can't use focus wheel. Sony Intuitive finds focus and can move focus points on the LCD." That's so true, Java. The focus now is amazing. I hope you've recovered as good as you can from your cancer there, and hopefully you're fine. But yes, you're right. The focus now on those cameras is just amazing. Jim said, "I had a teacher by that name in 6th grade. He's talking about Jerry McNutt." And that's about it, guys. I think we're just about the end of the day. Any last questions before we call it a day? What time is it? Nearly 3:10. Like I said, I'll be going to see my new grandson tonight. Woohoo! I can't wait to see him. That's about it. All right, guys. Well, we might call it a day. Stay tuned over the weekend. I might post a couple of videos. Obviously, I'll put my new wedding one up. The 4th one of that. I think it's starting for the bride getting changed. If you can, I do advise, if you don't know how to pose and things like that, check out my last one that I did, the last wedding one that I did, because in that video, I go through all the discussions about how I pose brides and how I talk to them and things like that. And you might find that if you are a little bit nervous about posing and things like that, you'll get more out of watching that video than anything else you can actually watch. So make sure you do watch that video, because at the beginning particularly, it goes through all about what I talk about on the day, how the bride stands, how they hold their arms, their chins, everything. It takes them all through that stuff. And that's just the Posing the Bride video that I've posted early this week, I mean. So, you know, please have a look at that video, because I really think it's amazing, and it hasn't had many views, which surprises me. That's about it, I think. That's about all. Everyone's just saying congrats on the new family. All right, thanks, guys. I'll be off now. See you all again soon. If I don't see you, have a great weekend. Obviously, if you're in Australia, it's Saturday tomorrow. If you're in America, hopefully you'll have a good Friday and a great weekend ahead. That's all for now, guys. See you later. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I'm going to put that down the bottom here again, just so you can follow me there. It's DOASTLER. All right, make sure you follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Bye, guys.